The fluorescent lights of the downtown hotel lobby reflected off the polished marble floors, casting everything in a cold, sterile glow. Chen pushed his cleaning cart slowly across the expansive space, the wheels squeaking softly in the early morning silence. His navy blue janitor's uniform hung loose on his thin frame, the name tag slightly crooked on his chest. At 42 years old, his hands bore the calluses of years spent scrubbing, mopping, and fixing things that wealthy guests broke without a second thought. Before you jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Most people didn't see Marcus. To them, he was part of the furniture, invisible wallpaper in their world of luxury and excess. They walked past him without acknowledgment, their designer shoes clicking against the floors he had just cleaned, their expensive perfumes leaving trails in the air he breathed. But Marcus didn't mind. He had learned long ago that invisibility came with its own kind of freedom. What they didn't know, what nobody bothered to ask, was that Marcus had once been someone different. The wedding ring on his finger had grown thin from years of wear, a constant reminder of Emily, his late wife, who had passed 3 years ago from cancer. She had been his whole world, and when she left, she took most of his light with her. All that remained was their daughter, Sophie, a bright-eyed 7-year-old who believed her father hung the moon and stars. Every morning, Marcus woke at 4:30 to get Sophie ready for school before his shift started at 6. He packed her lunch with careful precision, always including a hand-drawn note on a napkin because Emily used to do that, and he refused to let that tradition die. Then he would drop her off at his mother's house, where she would take Sophie to school, and Marcus would head to the Grand Sterling Hotel, where he had worked for the past 8 years. The morning of October 15th started like any other. Marcus had already cleaned the third-floor conference rooms and was making his way down to the lobby when he heard the commotion. A crowd had gathered near the main entrance, their phones already out, recording whatever spectacle was unfolding. He tried to skirt around them, not wanting to get involved, but the manager, Mr. Peterson, spotted him and waved him over urgently. A sleek black limousine sat parked directly in front of the hotel's revolving doors, its engine smoking slightly, a clear violation of the no parking zone. But what caught Marcus's attention wasn't the car, it was the woman standing beside it, her arms crossed, her expression a mixture of fury and impatience. She was tall, probably in her mid-30s, with perfectly styled auburn hair that fell in waves past her shoulders. Her business suit looked like it cost more than Marcus made in 3 months, and the jewelry adorning her wrists and neck caught the morning light like captured stars. Everything about her screamed wealth, power, and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. This was Isabella Hartwell, CEO of Hartwell Industries, one of the largest tech companies on the East Coast. Marcus recognized her from magazines that guests left behind in their rooms. Forbes had recently named her one of the most influential women in business, with a net worth that made his annual salary look like pocket change. Her driver, a nervous-looking man in his 50s, stood beside the smoking limousine, repeatedly trying to start the engine with no success. Each attempt produced nothing but a grinding sound that made several onlookers wince. Mr. Peterson rushed over to Isabella, his hands clasped together in that apologetic way managers perfected. "Miss Hartwell, I'm terribly sorry about this inconvenience. We've already called for a mechanic, but with morning traffic, it might be 30 to 40 minutes before someone arrives." Isabella's jaw tightened. 40 minutes? I have a board meeting across town in 20 minutes. This is unacceptable. Her voice carried across the lobby, sharp and commanding. She turned to her driver. "How could you let this happen, Richard? I pay you specifically to prevent situations like this." Richard's face flushed red. "Ma'am, the car was running perfectly yesterday. I don't understand what could have. I don't pay you to make excuses," Isabella cut him off. She pulled out her phone, already dialing, her heel tapping impatiently against the marble. The crowd around them had grown larger, guests and employees alike drawn to the drama like moths to flame. Marcus started to back away, wanting no part of this scene, but Mr. Peterson grabbed his arm. "Marcus, go get some warning cones and rope off this area. We can't have guests tripping over this mess." He nodded and turned toward his supply closet, but as he passed the limousine, he couldn't help but pause. The smell of the smoke was familiar, not serious engine failure, but something simpler. His eyes traced the lines of the hood, noting the way the smoke came in short puffs rather than continuous streams. He had seen this before, many times. Isabella must have noticed him staring because she suddenly turned her sharp gaze on him. "Can I help you with something, or do you just enjoy watching people's mornings fall apart?" Several people in the crowd snickered. Marcus felt heat rise to his cheeks. "No, ma'am. Just getting supplies." "Then get them and stop gawking." She dismissed him with a wave of her hand, turning back to her phone call. Marcus retrieved the cones and began setting them up around the limousine, trying to ignore the growing spectacle. Isabella paced back and forth, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice growing more agitated with each passing minute. Other hotel guests had started complaining about the blocked entrance, their expensive luggage piling up as bellhops tried to navigate around the situation. "This is ridiculous," Isabella announced to no one in particular. "In this city, with all its supposed resources, and not a single competent mechanic can arrive in less than an hour?" She looked around at the crowd, her eyes scanning faces with barely concealed contempt. "Does anyone here actually know anything useful, or are you all just content to stand around recording this for your social media?" A few people lowered their phones sheepishly, but most kept recording. This was too good a story to miss, a billionaire CEO stranded because of a broken car. Marcus finished placing the last cone and was about to leave when something inside him stirred. It was Emily's voice in his head, the way she used to encourage him. "You're brilliant, Marcus. Don't let anyone make you feel small." She had said that to him 1,000 times during their marriage, especially after the accident that had derailed his engineering career 15 years ago. He approached Mr. Peterson quietly. "Sir, I think I might know what's wrong with the car." Peterson looked at him skeptically. "Marcus, you're a janitor, not a mechanic. Let's just wait for the professionals." "I used to be an automotive engineer," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Before I worked here. I could at least take a look." Peterson's eyebrows rose in surprise, but before he could respond, Isabella's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Did I just hear correctly? The janitor thinks he can fix a $200,000 limousine?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. She walked over to them, her heels clicking sharply. Up close, Marcus could see her eyes were a striking green, but cold, calculating. This isn't a leaky faucet or a clogged toilet. This is precision German engineering. "Ma'am, I just thought," Marcus began, but she held up a perfectly manicured hand. "You thought wrong." She looked him up and down, taking in his worn uniform, the cleaning supplies on his cart, the badge that identified him as maintenance staff. "Let me guess, you watched a few YouTube videos and now you think you're qualified to work on luxury vehicles?" A few people in the crowd laughed. Marcus felt his face burning, but he stood his ground. "I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering from MIT. I specialized in automotive systems for 8 years before you became a janitor." Isabella interrupted, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "That's quite a career trajectory. From MIT to mopping floors. Forgive me if I don't find your credentials particularly convincing." The crowd's laughter grew louder. Someone shouted, "She's got a point." Marcus wanted to disappear, to push his cart away and pretend this conversation never happened. But then he thought of Sophie, of the way she looked at him every morning with such pride and love, never caring about his job title or how much money he made. "Ma'am, I'm just trying to help," he said quietly. Isabella studied him for a moment, then a cruel smile played at her lips. "You want to help? Fine. Here's a proposal for you, janitor man." She raised her voice so everyone could hear. "If you can fix this car, if you can get it running in the next 90 seconds, I'll marry you. How's that for motivation?" The crowd erupted in shocked laughter and excited chatter. Phones were raised higher, everyone eager to capture this moment. Isabella's eyes sparkled with malicious amusement, clearly enjoying her own joke at his expense. Mr. Peterson pulled at Marcus's sleeve. "Come on, Marcus. Let's just go. Don't let her humiliate you further." But something had changed in Marcus. Maybe it was the laughter, or the way Isabella looked at him like he was nothing, or maybe it was just the exhaustion of being invisible for so long. He thought about all the times he had swallowed his pride, accepted the dismissals, let people underestimate him because it was easier than explaining his past. He looked at Isabella directly. 90 seconds? She checked her watch, a diamond-encrusted piece that probably cost more than his car. "I'm a busy woman. 90 seconds, starting whenever you open that hood. And when you fail, which you will, I want you to apologize to everyone here for wasting their time with your delusions of competence." Marcus felt his heart pounding. Every rational part of his brain screamed at him to walk away, to preserve what little dignity he had left. But there was another voice, Emily's voice, reminding him who he used to be, who he still was underneath the uniform. He walked to the front of the limousine and placed his hand on the hood. It was still warm from the engine's attempts to start. The crowd fell silent, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Isabella stood with her arms crossed, that same cruel smile on her face, already savoring her victory. "Clock starts when you open it," she reminded him. Marcus took a deep breath, said a silent prayer, and popped the hood. The hood lifted with a smooth mechanical hiss, revealing the intricate maze of metal, wires, and components that made up the limousine's engine. Marcus's eyes swept across the landscape of machinery with the practiced efficiency of someone who had spent years decoding such puzzles. Somewhere behind him, he heard Isabella announce loudly, 90 seconds starts now, followed by the collective intake of breath from the watching crowd. Time seemed to slow down. Marcus blocked out the murmurs, the camera phones, the weight of dozens of eyes boring into his back. His mind shifted into a mode he hadn't accessed in years, a state of absolute focus where engines spoke to him in a language most people would never understand. His hands moved with surprising speed, fingers tracing along the fuel lines, checking connections, assessing temperatures. The smoke was still rising in lazy spirals from near the engine block, but Marcus could immediately tell it wasn't coming from any catastrophic failure. The pattern was wrong for that. He leaned in closer, his nose picking up the distinct scent of overheated rubber mixed with a faint electrical burn. His eyes zeroed in on a series of wires near the alternator, and there it was. A connection had come loose, likely from vibration over time, causing the alternator to work improperly. This had created a cascade effect where the battery wasn't charging correctly, which in turn was causing the starter to receive insufficient power. The smoke was coming from a rubber gasket that had been positioned too close to the malfunctioning alternator, heating up from the excess resistance in the system. Marcus's hands moved with practiced precision. He reached into the engine bay, his fingers finding the loose connection immediately. 15 seconds had passed. He could hear Isabella behind him, talking to someone on her phone, her tone dismissive. "Yes, I'm still stuck here. Some janitor is pretending he can fix it. I'll be there soon, just having a little entertainment first." The laughter that followed her comment washed over Marcus, but he didn't let it penetrate his concentration. His fingers worked the connection, feeling for the proper seating. The fitting had worn down slightly, which explained why it had vibrated loose. He applied pressure at precisely the right angle, feeling the satisfying click as the connector seated properly into its housing. 30 seconds. But Marcus knew that simply reconnecting the wire wouldn't be enough. The system had been running incorrectly, which meant there would be residual issues in the electrical flow. He needed to reset the engine's computer, force it to recognize the corrected power distribution. His eyes scanned the engine bay rapidly, finding the fuse box mounted on the driver's side. He popped it open with a practiced flick of his thumb. 45 seconds, Isabella called out, her voice tinged with amusement. "I hope you're not just admiring the view in there." More laughter from the crowd. Someone shouted, "He's probably never seen an engine that nice before." Marcus ignored them all. His fingers moved through the fuse box with absolute certainty, finding the main computer relay. He pulled it out, counted 3 seconds in his head to allow the capacitors to fully discharge, then pushed it back in firmly. 60 seconds. Marcus straightened up and moved to the driver's side door. Richard, the driver, stepped back nervously as Marcus opened it and slid into the leather seat. The interior smelled of expensive cologne and new car scent. His hand found the ignition, but he paused. One more thing. He reached down and adjusted the position of a small dial near the steering column, something most people wouldn't even notice. It was a manual override for the fuel injection system, likely bumped accidentally when Richard had been frantically trying to restart the car. 75 seconds. Isabella appeared at the window, tapping on the glass with one perfectly manicured fingernail. Time's almost up, Janitor. Ready to admit defeat? Her smile was radiant, triumphant, the expression of someone who had never experienced genuine failure in their privileged life. Marcus met her eyes through the window. For just a moment, he saw something flicker there, a brief uncertainty, as if she suddenly realized he wasn't panicking or fumbling. His hand turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life. Not the grinding, struggling sound it had made before, but a smooth, powerful purr that spoke of perfect mechanical harmony. The dashboard lights blazed to life, all systems showing green. The smoking had stopped completely. Marcus let the engine run for a moment, listening to its rhythm, confirming that everything was functioning as it should. 88 seconds. He stepped out of the car, gently closing the door behind him. The engine continued its steady rumble, perfect and strong. The silence from the crowd was deafening. Marcus walked back to the front of the vehicle and carefully lowered the hood, making sure it latched properly. Then he turned to face Isabella. Her face had gone pale, her mouth slightly open in an expression of absolute shock. The cruel smile had vanished completely, replaced by something Marcus couldn't quite read. Disbelief, certainly. Perhaps embarrassment. Maybe even a hint of fear at what she had just witnessed and what it meant about her own assumptions. The crowd erupted. Not in laughter this time, but in genuine amazement. Phones were still recording, but now the comments were different. Did you see that? He actually did it. 90 seconds, just like she said. That was incredible. Mr. Peterson stood with his mouth hanging open, staring at Marcus as if seeing him for the first time. Richard, the driver, looked between his employer and Marcus with an expression of pure confusion. Several hotel guests were applauding, caught up in the unexpected drama of the moment. Marcus wiped his hands on a cloth he kept in his pocket, waiting. Isabella remained frozen, her perfect composure shattered. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. Her phone buzzed in her hand, but she didn't answer it. The seconds stretched out, awkward and heavy. Finally, she found her voice, though it came out smaller than before, stripped of its earlier confidence. How did you? That's impossible. Richard has been trying for 20 minutes. The alternator connection was loose, Marcus explained quietly, his tone neither boastful nor resentful, simply factual. It was causing insufficient power to the starter and creating resistance heat. I reseated the connection, reset the engine computer by pulling the main relay, and adjusted the fuel injection override that had been accidentally moved. Standard diagnostic procedure for this model. The smoke was just a rubber gasket getting too hot from the electrical resistance. Nothing serious. He delivered this explanation in the same calm, professional tone he might have used 15 years ago when he worked at the engineering firm, before the accident that had killed 2 of his colleagues and ended his career in automotive design. Before the lawsuits and the blame and the slow destruction of everything he had built. Before Emily had gotten sick and the medical bills had consumed every penny of their savings. Isabella stared at him as if he were speaking a foreign language. The crowd had pressed closer now, sensing that something significant was happening, though most of them couldn't fully grasp the technical details Marcus had just provided. They only knew that the impossible had happened, that the janitor had done in 90 seconds what the expensive limousine's own driver couldn't do in 20 minutes. A woman in the crowd, elderly with kind eyes, spoke up. "Young man, that was remarkable. Where did you learn to do that?" Marcus turned to her, grateful for the gentle question. I used to work in automotive engineering, ma'am. Before I came here. Used to work? Another voice from the crowd, a businessman in an expensive suit. Why would you leave a career like that to become a janitor? No offense. The question hung in the air, and Marcus felt the familiar weight of his past pressing down on him. He could see the genuine curiosity in their faces, the confusion about how someone with his obvious skills had ended up pushing a cleaning cart through hotel corridors. But some stories were too painful to tell to strangers, too complicated to explain in a parking lot surrounded by cameras and gossip. Life happens, he said simply, hoping they would accept that and move on. But Isabella wasn't done. She had recovered some of her composure, though her face still held that shell-shocked expression. You said MIT. You really went to MIT? Yes, ma'am. Class of 2008. Graduated with honors in mechanical engineering with a specialization in automotive systems. And you work here as a janitor. It wasn't a question, but a statement laden with implications she was still trying to process. I work here as a maintenance technician, Marcus corrected gently. It's honest work. It pays the bills. It lets me be there for my daughter. The mention of his daughter seemed to shift something in the atmosphere. Several people in the crowd nodded with understanding, their expressions softening. Being a father, doing what you had to do for your children, that was something most people could understand and respect. Isabella's phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. She glanced at it, then back at Marcus, clearly torn between multiple competing impulses. The board meeting she was late for, the impossible situation she found herself in, the words she had spoken so carelessly just minutes ago. If you can fix this car, if you can get it running in the next 90 seconds, I'll marry you. Someone in the crowd, emboldened by the turn of events, called out, so when's the wedding? This prompted nervous laughter, everyone waiting to see how Isabella Hartwell, Billionaire CEO, would handle being held accountable for her own mocking challenge. Isabella's jaw tightened. Her eyes swept across the crowd, seeing all the recording phones, recognizing that this moment was already being uploaded to social media, shared and commented upon. In the age of viral videos and instant accountability, her words had weight whether she intended them to or not. Marcus could see the calculation happening behind her eyes, the assessment of damage control, reputation management, public relations. I apologize, she said finally, her voice carrying across the parking area. That was inappropriate of me. I made a thoughtless joke at your expense, and you proved me spectacularly wrong. I'm sorry. The apology sounded rehearsed, corporate, the kind of statement crafted by public relations teams to minimize controversy. But at least it was something. Marcus nodded, accepting it, ready to return to his work and let this strange morning fade into memory. However, Isabella continued, and something in her tone made Marcus look up sharply. I am curious about something. You clearly have exceptional skills, education, and experience. Yet you're working here in a job that, forgive me, seems far beneath your qualifications. Why? The question was blunt, almost intrusive, but her tone had changed. The mockery was gone, replaced by what sounded like genuine curiosity. Marcus felt dozens of eyes on him, waiting for an answer he wasn't sure he wanted to give. Mr. Peterson stepped forward, perhaps sensing Marcus's discomfort. Miss Hartwell, I think Marcus has helped you enough for one morning. Perhaps you should head to your meeting? But Isabella held up a hand, her attention fixed solely on Marcus now. I'm serious. I want to understand. The way you diagnosed that problem, the speed and precision of your work, that's not something you learn from a manual. That's years of high-level experience. So what happened? Why are you here instead of running an engineering department somewhere? Marcus felt his throat tighten. The old shame tried to rise up, the familiar weight of failure and loss. But looking at Isabella's face, he realized her question wasn't coming from a place of judgment anymore. She was asking because she genuinely wanted to know, because something about what she had witnessed had fundamentally challenged her assumptions about the world and the people in it. I was involved in an accident, Marcus said quietly. 15 years ago. I was lead engineer on a prototype vehicle project. During a test run, something went wrong. 2 of my colleagues died. The investigation cleared me of direct fault, but the company needed someone to blame, and I was the most convenient target. I lost my position, my reputation in the industry was destroyed, and no engineering firm would touch me after that. So I took whatever work I could find to support my wife and newborn daughter. The crowd had gone completely silent now, the levity of moments ago evaporated in the face of real human tragedy. Marcus continued, the words coming easier now that he had started. Then 3 years ago, my wife Emily was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. The medical bills, even with insurance, were devastating. She fought for 18 months before she passed. By then, I had been working at this hotel for 5 years. Mr. Peterson had been kind enough to give me flexibility with my schedule so I could be with Emily during her treatments. After she died, I stayed because it's stable, because it lets me pick my daughter up from school, because I can't afford to take risks anymore. Isabella's expression had completely transformed. The confident, mocking woman from earlier had disappeared, replaced by someone who looked genuinely moved and perhaps ashamed. Several people in the crowd were wiping at their eyes. Even Richard, the driver, looked deeply affected. "I'm so sorry," Isabella said, and this time the apology sounded genuine, stripped of corporate polish. "I had no right to speak to you the way I did. I made assumptions based on nothing but prejudice and ignorance." Marcus shrugged, trying to lighten the suddenly heavy mood. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last. Most people see the uniform before they see the person wearing it. I'm used to it." "That doesn't make it right," Isabella said firmly. She looked down at her phone again, then made a decision that seemed to surprise even her. She typed something quickly, then looked back up at Marcus. "I just canceled my board meeting. Or rather, I told them to start without me. What you just did, what you just shared, that's more important than quarterly earnings reports." This announcement caused a stir in the crowd. Isabella Hartwell, known for her ruthless dedication to business, canceling a board meeting was almost as shocking as Marcus fixing the car in 90 seconds. Mr. Peterson looked like he might faint from the stress of the entire situation. Isabella stepped closer to Marcus, and he noticed for the first time that despite her expensive clothes and jewelry, despite her power and wealth, she looked tired. There were shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide, tension lines around her mouth that spoke of constant stress. "Can I buy you breakfast?" she asked. "I feel like I owe you more than just an apology. And honestly, I'd like to hear more about your story, if you're willing to share it." Marcus glanced at Mr. Peterson, who looked torn between being supportive and being terrified of offending their most important guest. "I'm still on shift," Marcus pointed out. "I'll handle it," Mr. Peterson said quickly. "Take your break, Marcus. You've earned it. Take as long as you need." The crowd was beginning to disperse now, people heading off to their own days, though many were still recording and typing on their phones. This story would be all over social media within the hour, Marcus realized. The janitor who fixed a billionaire's car in 90 seconds. He wasn't sure how he felt about that. "There's a cafe across the street," Marcus said finally. "They make decent coffee." Isabella smiled, and it was different from her earlier expressions. Smaller, more genuine, touched with uncertainty. "Lead the way." The cafe was called Morning Grace, a small establishment wedged between a bookstore and a dry cleaner. Marcus had been coming here for years, usually grabbing a quick coffee before his shift or during his lunch break. The owner, an older Greek woman named Helena, knew his usual order by heart and always asked about Sophie with genuine warmth. It was one of the few places where he felt like a person rather than a uniform. The bell above the door chimed as Marcus held it open for Isabella. She paused at the threshold, taking in the modest interior with its mismatched chairs, worn wooden tables, and the faint aroma of fresh bread and brewing coffee. It was worlds away from the places she usually frequented, Marcus imagined, but she stepped inside without hesitation. Helena looked up from behind the counter, her weathered face breaking into a warm smile when she saw Marcus. Then her eyes shifted to Isabella, and her expression changed to one of polite curiosity mixed with obvious recognition. "Marcus, my boy. And you bring a friend today. How wonderful." "Good morning, Helena," Marcus said, grateful for her easy warmth. "This is Isabella. We'll take a table by the window if that's all right." Of course, of course. Sit, sit. I bring you the good coffee today, not the regular stuff." Helena winked at him, already bustling behind her espresso machine. They settled into a small table near the front window, where morning sunlight streamed through, casting patterns on the scarred wood surface. Outside, the city was waking up fully now, people rushing past with briefcases and shopping bags, everyone absorbed in their own small dramas. Marcus found himself acutely aware of how strange this situation was, sitting across from a woman whose face appeared on business magazine covers, still wearing his janitor's uniform with its faded patches and coffee stains. Isabella removed her designer sunglasses and set them carefully on the table. Up close, without the crowd and the spectacle, Marcus could see more details. She had freckles across her nose that makeup hadn't quite covered, and there was a small scar near her left eyebrow. These imperfections somehow made her more human, less like the untouchable figure from earlier. "I don't do this often," Isabella said suddenly, her fingers tracing the grain of the wooden table. "Sit in places like this, I mean. My assistant usually schedules everything, coordinates locations. Business lunches happen in restaurants with Michelin stars and wine lists thicker than phone books." She looked around the cafe with an expression Marcus couldn't quite decipher. "This is nice. Real." Helen arrived with 2 steaming cups of coffee and a plate of fresh pastries that Marcus knew he hadn't ordered. "On the house," she announced, patting Marcus's shoulder affectionately. "You look like you need something sweet today. Both of you." She disappeared back behind the counter before either could protest. Isabella picked up her cup, inhaling the aroma. "She's lovely. How long have you been coming here?" 7 years, give or take. Since about 6 months after I started at the hotel. Helena's husband had just passed away, and she was struggling to keep this place running by herself. I started coming in, helping her fix things around the shop when I could. Broken chairs, leaky faucets, that kind of thing. In return, she makes sure I never leave hungry. Marcus took a sip of his coffee, feeling its warmth spread through him. "She's like family now. Watches Sophie sometimes when my mother can't." "Sophie," Isabella repeated softly. "That's your daughter's name?" "Yes. She's 7. Smart as a whip, loves dinosaurs and space, wants to be an astronaut when she grows up." Marcus couldn't help but smile when he talked about Sophie. "She's the reason I get up every morning, the reason any of this matters." Isabella nodded slowly, her fingers wrapped around her coffee cup as if drawing warmth from it. "I don't have children. Never found the time, or maybe never found the right person. My company became my baby, I suppose. Hartwell Industries. I built it from scratch after my father refused to let me take over his business because I was a woman." There was old bitterness in her voice. "He told me I should get married, have kids, let the men handle the serious work. So I proved him wrong. Spent 20 years proving him wrong." "Did he ever acknowledge that?" Marcus asked. "He died 5 years ago without ever admitting I had succeeded. Left his company to my younger brother, who ran it into the ground within 3 years." Isabella took a long drink of her coffee. "I bought the remnants at auction. Folded it into Hartwell Industries. Finally got what he never wanted me to have, but by then it didn't matter." The victory felt hollow. Marcus understood that kind of pain, the weight of proving yourself to people who would never give you the validation you sought. "I'm sorry. That must have been difficult." "It was character building, as they say." Isabella set down her cup and looked directly at him. "But I didn't bring you here to talk about my complicated relationship with my dead father. I want to hear more about you. About what happened with the accident, if you're comfortable sharing. I feel like I owe you that much, to actually listen after the way I treated you." Marcus hesitated. He rarely talked about the accident in detail, even with people he trusted. The memories were still sharp-edged and painful, even after 15 years. But something about Isabella's genuine interest, and perhaps the strange intimacy of the morning's events, made him want to tell the story properly for once. It was a revolutionary design, he began, his voice quiet. Or at least we thought it was. An electric vehicle prototype with a hybrid backup system that could switch seamlessly between power sources. I was 27, the youngest lead engineer the company had ever appointed. They called me a prodigy, said I was going to change the automotive industry. He paused, remembering that younger version of himself, so confident and naive. The test run was supposed to be routine. Just a controlled environment check of the power switching mechanism. But something went wrong with the software interface. The transition happened too quickly, caused a feedback loop in the electrical system. The battery caught fire. Isabella listened intently, not interrupting, her expression serious. 2 engineers were in the vehicle. David Martinez and Susan Chen. David was my best friend from college. Susan had just gotten engaged the week before. Marcus's throat tightened with the familiar grief. They couldn't get out in time. The safety releases failed, another flaw in the design. By the time we got the doors open, the smoke inhalation had already done too much damage. They died in the hospital 3 hours later. Oh, Marcus, Isabella breathed, her eyes glistening. The investigation took 6 months. They examined every line of code, every circuit, every decision made during the design process. Technically, the fault was traced to a manufacturing defect in one of the battery cells, something that should have been caught in quality control. But I was the lead engineer. I had signed off on the design. I had approved the test parameters. Marcus stared down at his coffee, seeing his reflection distorted in the dark liquid. The company needed someone to take responsibility publicly. My career was over overnight. The industry blacklisted me. I couldn't even get an interview at entry-level positions. But it wasn't your fault, Isabella said firmly. A manufacturing defect isn't a design flaw. You couldn't have known. Try explaining that to the families of the people who died. Try explaining it to yourself when you wake up at 3 in the morning seeing their faces. Marcus shook his head. I should have caught it. Should have insisted on more testing. Should have been more careful. They sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of the cafe washing over them. Helena's espresso machine hissed and gurgled. Other patrons murmured in low conversation. Outside, a bus rumbled past, brakes squealing. What did your wife say? Isabella asked gently. Emily, right? Marcus felt a smile tug at his lips despite the heavy conversation. Emily was 8 months pregnant with Sophie when it happened. She was terrified, not just about the accident but about what would happen to us financially. But she never blamed me. Not once. She told me that good people sometimes face terrible circumstances, and that didn't make them less good. He blinked back sudden tears. When Sophie was born a month later, Emily insisted we name her after Susan. Sophia Susan Chen Martinez was too long, she said, but Sophie felt right. A way to honor them. Isabella reached across the table and placed her hand over his. The gesture was simple, human, and Marcus felt surprised by how much the connection meant. Your wife sounds like she was an extraordinary person. She was the best person I've ever known, Marcus said honestly. When she got sick, when the cancer came, I kept thinking about how unfair it all was. Like the universe was punishing us over and over. But Emily faced it with more grace than I could ever manage. She spent her last months making sure Sophie and I would be okay without her. Recording videos for Sophie's future birthdays, writing letters for her to open on important occasions, teaching me how to braid hair and handle parent-teacher conferences. He laughed wetly. I still can't do a proper French braid, but I try. You're raising Sophie alone? Isabella asked. My mother helps a lot. She's retired, lives about 20 minutes away. She picks Sophie up from school most days, watches her until I finish work. I don't know what I'd do without her. Marcus took another sip of coffee, trying to steady himself. Sophie's the reason I keep going. She deserves a good life, deserves to chase her dreams. If that means I push a mop and clean toilets to give her stability and safety, then that's what I do. There's no shame in honest work. No, Isabella agreed quietly. There isn't. I'm the one who should be ashamed for suggesting otherwise. For treating you like you were beneath me because of your job title. She withdrew her hand and leaned back in her chair, her expression troubled. I've become exactly what I swore I'd never be. My father looked down on people he considered inferior. Service workers, support staff, anyone who didn't move in his wealthy circles. I hated him for that. And yet this morning, I did the same thing. You apologized, Marcus pointed out. That takes courage. Does it? Or is it just basic human decency that I should have practiced from the beginning? Isabella picked at one of Helena's pastries, breaking off small pieces without really eating. I've spent so long building walls, proving I'm untouchable, that I've forgotten how to see people. Really see them. You fixed my car in 90 seconds, something my own paid driver couldn't manage, and my first instinct was to mock you rather than thank you. What does that say about me? Marcus considered this. It says you're human. Flawed, like everyone else. The question is what you do with that realization. Isabella met his eyes, and he saw vulnerability there that probably few people ever witnessed. What would you do? If you were me? I'd remember this feeling, Marcus said. Use it. The next time you're about to make an assumption about someone based on their appearance or job, remember the janitor who knew more about engines than you expected. Remember that everyone has a story you don't know. That's very wise, Isabella said with a small smile. Are you always this insightful? Emily used to say I thought too much, worried about people's feelings more than I should. Marcus returned the smile. But I figure if we're not kind to each other, what's the point of any of this? Helena appeared at their table, refilling their coffee cups without being asked. You two look very serious over here. Everything okay? Everything's fine, Helena, Marcus assured her. Just having an unexpectedly deep conversation. The best kind, Helena declared. Marcus, your usual sandwich for lunch later? I have fresh roast beef today. That sounds perfect, thank you. After Helena left, Isabella glanced at her phone, which had been buzzing periodically throughout their conversation. I should probably check in with my office. Let them know I haven't been kidnapped or suffered a mental breakdown. She scrolled through messages, her expression growing more tense. Although they might think the latter when I tell them what I want to do. What do you want to do? Marcus asked, curious despite himself. Isabella set down her phone and looked at him with an intensity that was almost unnerving. I want to offer you a job. A real job, using your actual skills. Hartwell Industries has an entire automotive division developing electric vehicle technology. We're always looking for talented engineers, especially ones with your background and expertise. Marcus felt his heart skip. The offer was tempting, dangerously so, but years of disappointment had taught him caution. Isabella, that's generous, but you don't have to do this out of guilt. I'm fine where I am. This isn't about guilt, Isabella insisted. Well, maybe partly about guilt. But mostly it's about recognizing talent when I see it. What you did this morning wasn't luck. It was the result of years of training and experience. You diagnosed and fixed a complex problem in under 2 minutes. Do you know how valuable that kind of skill is? I've been out of the field for 15 years, Marcus pointed out. Technology has moved on. I'd be starting from behind. You'd catch up faster than you think. And in the meantime, you'd be contributing, building, creating. Using your mind for something more than figuring out which cleaning solution works best on marble floors. Isabella leaned forward, her business instincts clearly engaged now. I'm not talking about some token position either. I mean a real engineering role with competitive salary, full benefits, opportunities for advancement. You could work on projects that matter, maybe even save lives by improving vehicle safety. The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. How long had it been since he'd even let himself dream about working in his field again? He'd locked that part of himself away, convinced it was dead and buried with his past. But sitting here, listening to Isabella's offer, he felt that old hunger stirring. The desire to create, to solve problems, to be more than invisible. What about my schedule? He asked, and even as the words left his mouth, he realized he was actually considering this. I need to be able to pick Sophie up from school, be there for her. We have flexible scheduling. Remote work options. Whatever you need to make it work with your family responsibilities. Isabella was clearly warming to the idea, her natural business acumen taking over. Look, I'm not saying this would be easy. You'd have to prove yourself again, deal with people who might question your absence from the field. But if you're half as good as I think you are, you'll silence those doubts quickly. Marcus thought about Sophie, about the conversations they'd had where she asked why her daddy cleaned buildings when he was so smart. He'd always told her that all work had dignity, that helping keep spaces clean and functional mattered. And he believed that, truly. But he also thought about the example he was setting, about whether he was showing her to chase her dreams or to settle for safety. Can I think about it? He asked finally. This is a big decision. I'd need to talk to my mother, figure out logistics, make sure I'm not setting myself up for another fall. Of course, Isabella said immediately. Take all the time you need. But Marcus, I want you to know this is a genuine offer. I'll have my HR department draw up a formal proposal, put everything in writing so you can see exactly what I'm offering. No pressure, no obligation. Just an opportunity, if you want it. Marcus nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities and fears in equal measure. Thank you. Really. Whether I take the job or not, thank you for seeing me today. For listening. Thank you for teaching me a lesson I clearly needed to learn, Isabella countered. And for not letting me stay comfortable in my prejudices. They finished their coffee in more comfortable silence, the weight of the morning's events settling into something that felt almost like the beginning of an unexpected friendship. Marcus found himself studying Isabella when she wasn't looking, trying to reconcile the harsh woman from the hotel parking lot with this person who seemed genuinely interested in making amends. When they finally stood to leave, Helena rushed over with a paper bag. For Sophie, she announced, pressing it into Marcus's hands. Cookies, the ones with chocolate chips she likes. And some baklava for you, because you look like you need sweetness today. Helena, you spoil us, Marcus protested, but he accepted the bag gratefully. That's what I'm here for, spoiling good people. Helena turned to Isabella with a knowing look. You take care of my Marcus, yes? He's special, that one. Heart of gold. Isabella smiled, and it reached her eyes this time. I'm beginning to understand that, Helena. I'll do my best. They walked out into the morning sunshine together, the city now fully awake and bustling around them. Across the street, Marcus could see the hotel, his cart probably still sitting where he'd left it in the parking area. His normal life, waiting for him to return to it. But something had shifted, some door had opened that he'd thought was sealed forever. I should get back, he said reluctantly. Mr. Peterson is probably having a heart attack wondering what happened to me. And I should actually go to work, even if I'm spectacularly late. Isabella pulled out her phone again, already typing. But Marcus, I'm serious about the offer. I'll have my people contact you by tomorrow with the details. Just promise me you'll consider it genuinely, not just dismiss it out of fear. I promise, Marcus said, and meant it. Isabella hesitated, then extended her hand. Thank you for this morning. For being gracious when you had every right to be angry. For reminding me that there's a world beyond boardrooms and profit margins. Marcus shook her hand, noting how soft it was compared to his own work-roughened palm. Thank you for the apology. For the coffee. For the offer. For being willing to see past your first impressions. They stood there for a moment, two people from completely different worlds who had collided by chance and discovered unexpected common ground. Then Isabella turned toward her still-running limousine, where Richard waited nervously by the driver's door. She paused and looked back. "That thing you did," she called. "The marriage proposal joke. I want you to know I didn't mean to trivialize marriage or make light of commitment. It was thoughtless." Marcus felt a smile tug at his lips. "I know. And for what it's worth, I don't think you're as terrible as you're worried you might be." "That's probably the nicest thing anyone's said to me in months," Isabella laughed. "Which is either very sad or very telling about my life." "Maybe a little of both," Marcus agreed. She waved once more, then climbed into the back of the limousine. Richard, looking relieved that his employer's car was actually working, pulled smoothly away from the curb and disappeared into traffic. Marcus watched until the vehicle was out of sight, then turned back toward the hotel. Mr. Peterson met him at the entrance, looking frazzled. "Marcus. Are you all right? What happened? What did she say?" "She apologized," Marcus said simply. "And she offered me a job." Mr. Peterson's eyes went wide. "A job? With Hartwell Industries?" "Marcus, that's incredible. Are you going to take it?" "I don't know yet," Marcus admitted, retrieving his cleaning cart from where he'd abandoned it. "It's complicated." "Complicated how?" "This could be your chance to get back into your real career." Marcus began pushing the cart toward the service elevator, Mr. Peterson trailing beside him. "It could also be a disaster. I've been out of the field for 15 years. What if I fail? What if I uproot Sophie's life and it doesn't work out? At least here, I know what to expect. I'm good at this job. I'm reliable. Safe. Safe," Mr. Peterson repeated, his tone thoughtful. "Marcus, I've known you for 8 years. You're one of the most overqualified employees I've ever had, and I've always wondered why you stayed. I thought it was just about stability after your wife passed, but maybe it's also about fear." The words stung because they were true. Marcus stopped the cart, looking at his manager and friend. "What if I try and fail again? What if I'm not as good as I used to be? What if you're even better?" Mr. Peterson countered. "What if all the things you've been through, all the loss and struggle, have made you stronger and more capable? What if you're teaching Sophie to play it safe instead of showing her how to be brave?" Marcus thought about Sophie, about her dreams of space travel and exploration, about the way she talked about becoming an astronaut with absolute conviction that she could do anything. Was he undermining those dreams by not chasing his own? "I need to talk to her," Marcus said finally. "And my mother. This affects all of us." "Of course," Mr. Peterson agreed. "But Marcus, whatever you decide, know that I'm proud of you. For how you handled yourself this morning, for who you are. And if you do leave, we'll miss you terribly, but I'll be happy knowing you're finally using all those gifts you've been hiding under a janitor's uniform." Marcus felt emotion tighten his throat. "Thank you. For everything. For giving me a chance 8 years ago when no one else would. For being flexible when Emily was sick. For treating me like a person instead of just an employee. You made that easy," Mr. Peterson said with a smile. "Now get back to work before I start crying in the middle of the lobby. We have standards to maintain." Marcus laughed and continued toward the service elevator, his mind spinning with possibilities. He thought about Emily, about what she would say if she were here. She'd tell him to take the chance, to bet on himself. She'd remind him that playing it safe wasn't the same as living fully. She'd want Sophie to have a father who showed her that it was never too late to change her story. The rest of his shift passed in a blur. Marcus went through his usual routines, cleaning rooms and restocking supplies, but his thoughts were elsewhere, imagining what it would be like to sit at a drafting table again, to solve engineering problems, to create something new. The fear was still there, persistent and loud, but underneath it was something else. Hope, fragile and tentative, but growing stronger with each passing hour. When his shift finally ended at 3 o'clock, Marcus drove to his mother's house to pick up Sophie. She burst out the front door the moment she saw his car, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, her smile bright enough to power cities. "Daddy," she shouted, launching herself into his arms with the fearless confidence of a child who has never doubted her father's ability to catch her. Marcus held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo and the indefinable essence that was purely Sophie. "Hey, sunshine. How was school? We learned about Mars today. Did you know that a day on Mars is almost the same as a day on Earth? 24 hours and 39 minutes. Sophie pulled back to look at his face, her eyes shining with excitement. "When I go to Mars, I won't even have to adjust my sleep schedule much." "That's pretty convenient," Marcus agreed, setting her down but keeping hold of her hand as they walked toward where his mother stood in the doorway. His mother, Carol, was 72 but moved with the energy of someone much younger. She'd been his rock after Emily died, the steady presence that kept both him and Sophie from falling apart completely. She looked at Marcus now with eyes that saw too much, that recognized something had changed. "You're home early," she observed. "Everything okay?" "Actually, Mom, I need to talk to you about something. Something important." Marcus glanced at Sophie, who was already chattering about a friend's birthday party next week. "Can Sophie watch a show for a bit while we talk?" Carol's expression grew concerned, but she nodded. "Sophie, honey, want to help Grandma finish the puzzle we started yesterday? It's the one with all the planets." "Yes." Sophie bounded inside, her attention already shifting to the new activity. Marcus and his mother settled in the kitchen, and he told her everything. The broken limousine, Isabella's mockery, fixing the car, the conversation at the cafe, the job offer. Carol listened without interrupting, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "This is what you've been waiting for," she said finally. "Whether you knew it or not. Or it's a mistake that will blow up my life again," Marcus countered. "Mom, I'm terrified. What if I'm not good enough anymore? What if I fail Sophie?" "Marcus, baby, you could never fail Sophie. She adores you exactly as you are." Carol reached across the table and took his hands. "But I also see how much of yourself you've had to lock away to feel safe. The part of you that loved engineering, that lit up when you talked about designs and innovations. That man has been sleeping for 15 years. Maybe it's time to wake him up." "Emily would tell me to take the job," Marcus said softly. Carol's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Emily would tell you that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what matters despite being afraid. She'd remind you that Sophie is watching, learning how to face her own challenges by watching how you face yours." Marcus knew his mother was right. He could almost hear Emily's voice in his head, that mixture of gentle encouragement and firm insistence that had gotten him through so many dark moments. She'd never let him hide from difficult choices, even when hiding felt safer. "What if I talk to Sophie about it?" Marcus suggested. "See what she thinks." "She's 7, Carol pointed out gently. "She'll say whatever she thinks will make you happy. The decision has to be yours." But Marcus shook his head. "She deserves to know what might change. This affects her life too. Different schedule, maybe a different routine. I need her input, even if she's young." Carol smiled, the kind of proud smile that made Marcus feel like he was doing something right for once. "You're a good father. Emily knew that. She trusted you completely with Sophie, and she was right to." They called Sophie into the kitchen, and she came bouncing in, her hands covered in puzzle piece dust. Marcus lifted her onto his lap, and she settled there with the easy comfort of a child who had never doubted her place in her father's arms. "Sunshine, I need to talk to you about something important," Marcus began, trying to find the right words. "You know how I work at the hotel, cleaning and fixing things?" Sophie nodded solemnly. "You're the best fixer there, you told me. Mr. Peterson says you can fix anything. Well, today something happened. A woman's car broke down, and I fixed it really fast. And because I did that, she offered me a different kind of job. Working with cars and machines, the kind of work I used to do before you were born. Sophie's eyes went wide. Like an engineer? Like the people who build rockets? Sort of like that, yes. But it would mean some changes. Different hours sometimes, maybe working from home other times. Our routine might be different. Would you be happier? Sophie asked, with the direct simplicity that children possessed, cutting through all the complexity to the heart of the matter. The question caught Marcus off guard. I don't know. Maybe. I think I might be. Sophie twisted in his lap to look directly at his face, her small hands reaching up to cup his cheeks the way Emily used to when she wanted his full attention. Mommy said you used to smile more. Before the sad thing happened with your work. She showed me pictures. You looked really happy. Marcus felt his breath catch. He hadn't known Emily had talked to Sophie about that, hadn't realized his daughter carried awareness of his past sadness. She told you about that? She said sometimes good people have bad things happen, but that doesn't mean they stop being good. And she said that someday you might get a chance to be that happy smile person again, and that I should help you be brave if you got scared. Sophie's voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes held wisdom beyond her years. Are you scared, Daddy? Yes, Marcus admitted, because he'd always been honest with Sophie. I'm very scared. It's okay to be scared, Sophie said, unconsciously echoing her mother's words. But you told me that astronauts are scared too, and they still go to space. You said being brave means doing important things even when you're scared. Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought, feeling something shift inside him. Here was his 7-year-old daughter, teaching him his own lessons, reflecting back the courage he'd tried to instill in her. How could he tell her to chase her dreams if he wasn't willing to chase his own? You're right, he said quietly. You're absolutely right, sunshine. So you're going to take the job? Sophie asked hopefully. And build amazing things? Maybe even help build rockets someday? Maybe not rockets, Marcus laughed, feeling lighter than he had in hours. But cars that are safer and better. Things that could help people. That's good too, Sophie declared. Mommy would be proud. I'm proud. She threw her arms around his neck and squeezed tight. You're going to be the best engineer ever, Daddy. Better than anyone. Carol wiped at her eyes, not bothering to hide her tears. Well, I think that settles it. When do you start? I haven't even officially accepted yet, Marcus pointed out, but he was smiling now, the decision crystallizing in his mind. I need to call Isabella, tell her yes, figure out all the details. Then call her, Carol urged. Don't wait. Don't give fear time to talk you out of it. Marcus pulled out his phone, realizing he didn't have Isabella's number. But she'd said her people would contact him tomorrow with details. Maybe he should wait for that formal proposal, take time to review everything carefully. But something in him rebelled against the caution, against the instinct to delay and overthink. He opened his phone's browser and searched for Hartwell Industries' main number. It took 3 transfers and 2 confused receptionists before he finally reached someone who seemed to know what he was talking about. Mr. Chen, yes, the woman on the other end said, her voice crisp and professional. Ms. Hartwell left explicit instructions that if you called, you were to be put through to her immediately, regardless of what she was doing. Please hold. The hold music was something classical that Marcus didn't recognize. He stood up, unable to sit still, pacing his mother's kitchen with Sophie watching him curiously. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was really happening. He was really doing this. Marcus? Isabella's voice came through the phone, slightly breathless, as if she'd run to answer. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, Marcus said quickly. I'm calling because I've made a decision. About the job offer. There was a pause on the other end, and Marcus could picture Isabella in some high-rise office, probably surrounded by assistants and executives, all the trappings of her powerful world. And what did you decide? I want to accept. If the offer is still open, I want to take the job. The words came out in a rush, propelled by Sophie's encouraging nod and his mother's warm smile. "Marcus, that's wonderful." Isabella's genuine pleasure came through clearly. "I'm so glad. I've already been talking to our automotive division head, and he's excited about the possibility of bringing you on board. When can you start? We'll need to process background checks, arrange orientation, all the usual logistics, but I can fast-track most of it if needed." "I'll need to give proper notice at the hotel," Marcus said, his mind already racing through practicalities. 2 weeks is standard. "And I'll need to know about the schedule, make sure it works with my daughter's school." "Of course, absolutely. I'll have Diane, my assistant, coordinate everything with you. She'll call you within the hour to set up a meeting. We'll go over salary, benefits, schedule options, everything." Isabella paused. "Marcus, I want you to know this isn't charity. I genuinely believe you'll be an asset to the company. But if at any point you feel uncomfortable or pressured, you can walk away. No hard feelings, no obligations. I understand. Thank you, Isabella. For the opportunity, for believing in me." "Thank you for giving me a chance to be better than I was this morning," Isabella replied softly. "I'll see you soon, Marcus. Welcome to Hartwell Industries." The call ended, and Marcus stood in his mother's kitchen, phone still in his hand, trying to process what had just happened. In the span of a few hours, his entire life had pivoted. The safe, predictable existence he'd built was about to be dismantled, replaced by something unknown and potentially wonderful or potentially disastrous. Sophie launched herself at him again, wrapping around his legs. "You did it. You were brave." "I was," Marcus agreed, scooping her up. "We were brave together, weren't we?" "Team Chen," Sophie declared, using the nickname Emily had coined for their family. "Unstoppable." Carol pulled them both into a hug, and for a moment they stood there, 3 generations holding each other, held together by love and loss and hope. Marcus thought about Emily, about how she'd be laughing and crying at the same time if she were here. How she'd probably say something about him finally listening to her advice, even if it took years. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind. Marcus gave his notice to Mr. Peterson, who accepted it with mixed emotions, happy for Marcus's opportunity but sad to lose him. The hotel staff threw him an unexpected going-away party, and Marcus was touched to discover how many of them considered him a friend, not just a coworker. The ranch hands who'd once smirked at Martha, the guests who'd ignored him in hallways, none of them had been part of Marcus's story, but he thought about the parallels anyway. How easy it was for people to dismiss you based on surface judgments, how redemption sometimes came from unexpected places. Helena at Morning Grace cried openly when he told her about the job, then insisted on catering a celebration dinner at his mother's house. She showed up with enough food to feed 20 people, even though it was just Marcus, Sophie, and Carol. "You take leftovers," she commanded. "You're going to be too busy to cook, starting this fancy new job. You need Helena's cooking to keep you strong." The formal offer from Hartwell Industries arrived as promised, delivered by courier in an elegant folder. The salary was more than double what he'd made at the hotel, with comprehensive health insurance, retirement benefits, and flexible scheduling options that would actually let him spend more time with Sophie. Marcus read through the contract 3 times, barely believing it was real. Isabella called him personally twice during those 2 weeks. Once to check in, make sure he wasn't having second thoughts. And once to invite him to a preliminary meeting with the automotive division team, a chance to meet his future colleagues before his official start date. The meeting took place in a conference room that probably cost more than his annual salary, all glass walls and modern furniture and a view of the city that made Marcus dizzy. 6 engineers sat around the table, ranging from young recent graduates to seasoned professionals near retirement. They looked at him with curiosity and varying degrees of skepticism. Isabella introduced him, giving a brief overview of his background without mentioning the accident or his years at the hotel. Marcus has extensive experience in automotive systems, particularly in electric and hybrid technologies. He's going to be joining our vehicle safety team, bringing fresh perspective to some of our ongoing challenges. One of the engineers, a man in his 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes, spoke up. No offense, but there's a gap in your resume. 15 years where you weren't working in the field. That's a long time. Technology has evolved significantly. Marcus had prepared for this question, knowing it would come. You're right, there is a gap. I had personal circumstances that took me out of active engineering work. But I've kept current with developments through journals, online courses, and my own projects. And sometimes, coming back after time away gives you a different perspective. You see problems with fresh eyes. Can you give an example? Another engineer asked, younger, with an edge of challenge in her voice. Marcus thought about the limousine, about the way he'd diagnosed the problem in seconds because he'd seen similar issues dozens of times before. Sometimes the most complex problems have simple solutions that experts overlook because they're too close to it. They're looking for sophisticated answers when what's needed is basic troubleshooting. My time away taught me not to overcomplicate things, to trust my instincts and experience. The young engineer looked unconvinced, but the older man nodded slowly. Fair enough. We'll see what you can do. Welcome aboard, Marcus. The meeting continued, discussing current projects and challenges. Marcus listened more than he spoke, absorbing information, getting a feel for the team dynamics. By the end, he felt cautiously optimistic. These were good people, serious about their work, and while he'd have to prove himself, that was fair. He'd been gone a long time. He needed to earn their trust. Isabella walked him out after the meeting, her heels clicking against the polished floors. That went well, I think. Richard is tough but fair. If you win him over, the others will follow. I'm not worried about winning anyone over, Marcus said honestly. I just want to do good work, contribute something meaningful. The rest will sort itself out. That's a healthy attitude, Isabella approved. They reached the elevator bank, and she pressed the button for him. Marcus, I want you to succeed here. Not just because I'm the one who hired you, but because I genuinely think you have something valuable to offer. Don't let imposter syndrome sabotage you. Is that something you struggle with? Marcus asked, curious. You seem so confident. Isabella laughed, but there was a brittle edge to it. I learned early to project confidence even when I didn't feel it. Fake it until you make it, as they say. But yes, sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. convinced I'm a fraud who's fooled everyone into thinking she's competent. She looked at him directly. The difference is, I've learned to work through it. Don't let fear win, Marcus. You've already proven you can do remarkable things under pressure. Trust that. The elevator arrived, and Marcus stepped inside. Thank you, Isabella. For everything. I won't let you down. Don't worry about letting me down, she said as the doors began to close. Just don't let yourself down. The doors closed, and Marcus rode down 47 floors, his reflection multiplying in the mirrored walls. He looked at himself, really looked, seeing past the nervous expression to the person underneath. A father. A widower. A former engineer. A current engineer again. All of these identities, layered and complex, making up the whole person he was. His first official day at Hartwell Industries arrived cool and clear, autumn settling over the city with crisp air and leaves beginning to turn. Marcus dropped Sophie at school, kissed her goodbye 3 times because she insisted it was good luck, then drove to the downtown office building that would be his new workplace. Security issued him a badge with his photo and his title, Senior Automotive Engineer, Safety Division. Marcus stared at it for a long moment, the plastic card feeling impossibly significant in his hand. It had been 15 years since he'd been called an engineer. 15 years of being invisible, dismissed, overlooked. This badge was proof that he'd clawed his way back. His workspace was a corner cubicle with a window view, a desk with a computer setup that looked intimidatingly modern, and shelves waiting to be filled with his belongings. Richard, the senior engineer from the meeting, stopped by within an hour of his arrival. Chen, good, you're here. We've got a problem with the prototype for the new EV line. Thermal management system keeps overheating during extended high-speed testing. 3 different teams have looked at it, no one can figure out why. Think you can take a look? It was clearly a test, throwing him into deep water immediately to see if he'd sink or swim. Marcus nodded. Show me the specs and the test data. I'll see what I can find. Richard handed him a tablet loaded with technical documents, schematics, test results, and failure analysis reports. Conference room 2 is free if you want to spread out. Let me know if you need anything. Marcus took the tablet to the conference room and immersed himself in the data. It had been a long time since he'd done this kind of deep analytical work, but his mind fell into the familiar patterns quickly. He read through failure reports, traced circuit diagrams, studied thermal imaging results. After 2 hours, he started seeing patterns. The overheating wasn't random. It occurred at specific speeds, under specific load conditions, always in the same sequence. The cooling system was adequate for the heat being generated, which meant the problem wasn't insufficient cooling. It was excess heat from an unexpected source. Marcus dug deeper into the power distribution data. A feedback loop in the regenerative braking system. Under certain conditions, when the vehicle was sustaining high speed for extended periods then needed to slow down, the regenerative system was creating a power surge that the battery management system couldn't process efficiently. The excess energy was converting to heat instead of being properly stored. Marcus pulled up a schematic and started sketching modifications, ways to reroute the power flow or add a buffer system. He was so absorbed in the work that he didn't notice Richard enter the conference room until the older engineer cleared his throat. Find something? Richard asked, peering at Marcus's notes. Marcus turned the tablet to show his findings. The regenerative braking system has a feedback issue under sustained high-speed conditions. It's creating power surges that exceed the battery management system's capacity to process quickly. The excess energy converts to heat. You need either a buffer capacitor system here, he pointed to his sketch, or a modified algorithm that anticipates the surge and adjusts power flow preemptively. Richard studied the notes, his expression unreadable. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Jessica, it's Richard. Get the test team together for a meeting in an hour. I think we found our thermal problem. He hung up and looked at Marcus with new respect. 4 hours. You've been here 4 hours and found what 3 teams missed over 2 months. Fresh eyes, Marcus said, echoing his earlier words. And maybe luck. That wasn't luck, Richard said firmly. That was experience and insight. Good work, Chen. He paused at the door. I was skeptical when Isabella brought you on. Thought maybe it was a publicity stunt or guilt or something. But if you keep this up, you'll fit in just fine here. After Richard left, Marcus sat alone in the conference room, staring at his notes and sketches. His hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline and relief mixing together. He'd done it. Actually done it. Contributed something real on his first day, proven that he still had the skills, that the years away hadn't erased what he'd learned. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to his mother, first day going well. I think I can actually do this. Her response came immediately, of course you can. We never doubted it. Emily is smiling down, so proud of you. Marcus blinked back unexpected tears. He thought about how far he'd traveled, from that parking lot encounter with Isabella to this moment, sitting in a conference room as an engineer again. How one moment of courage, one decision to step forward instead of back away, had changed everything. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings, introductions, and technical discussions. By the time 5 o'clock arrived, Marcus's brain felt stretched and exhausted in the best possible way. He drove to pick up Sophie from his mother's house, and she bombarded him with questions the moment he walked in. Was it amazing? Did you build anything? Did you wear a lab coat? Do engineers wear lab coats? Marcus laughed, lifting her up. It was challenging and exciting. I helped solve a problem with an electric car. And no lab coat, sorry to disappoint. That's okay, Sophie declared. You're still a real engineer now. Can you help me with my science project? We're supposed to build something that moves. I think I can manage that, Marcus said, his heart full. That night, after Sophie was in bed, Marcus sat in his small living room with a cup of tea, Emily's photo on the mantel catching the lamplight. He raised his cup in a silent toast to her memory, to everything she'd given him, to the courage she'd helped him find. I did it, he whispered to her picture. I'm scared out of my mind, but I did it. Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. The photo didn't answer, of course, but Marcus didn't need it to. He could feel Emily's presence in Sophie's laugh, in his mother's support, in the strength he'd found to change his life. She'd given him so much, and though she was gone, her love still carried him forward. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, new opportunities to prove himself. But tonight, Marcus allowed himself to simply feel proud. He'd faced his fears, taken the leap, and landed on solid ground. Whatever came next, he knew he could handle it. He wasn't just a janitor who'd once been an engineer. He was Marcus Chen, father, son, survivor, and yes, engineer. All of it, all at once, finally whole again. 6 months passed like a dream Marcus kept expecting to wake from. But every morning, he still drove to Hartwell Industries, still swiped his badge at security, still sat at his desk solving problems that mattered. The thermal management solution he'd proposed on his first day had worked flawlessly, saving the company months of delays and earning him recognition throughout the division. Richard had become something close to a mentor, challenging Marcus with increasingly complex projects and trusting him with greater responsibility. The younger engineers who'd been skeptical now sought his input regularly, valuing his unique perspective. Marcus discovered that his years away from the field hadn't diminished his skills but had actually enhanced them with patience, humility, and a broader understanding of how systems failed in the real world. Sophie thrived with the new arrangement. Marcus's flexible schedule meant he could volunteer at her school, help with science projects that actually utilized his expertise, and be present for soccer games and parent-teacher conferences. She talked constantly about her father the engineer, her pride evident and infectious. Carol remarked that she hadn't seen Marcus this alive since before Emily's diagnosis. On a spring morning, Marcus received an unexpected email from Isabella requesting a meeting. His stomach tightened with old anxieties. Had he done something wrong? Was this all about to fall apart? But when he arrived at her office, Isabella greeted him with a warm smile. Relax, Marcus. This is good news. Very good news, actually. She gestured for him to sit. The board has been reviewing performance across all divisions. Your work has been exceptional, consistently innovative, and your team integration has been seamless. We'd like to promote you to lead engineer for the new autonomous safety systems project. It comes with a significant raise and a team of your own. Marcus sat stunned, trying to process the words. Lead engineer. A team. 6 months ago, he'd been scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Isabella suggested with a grin. Unless you enjoy making me nervous with long silences. Yes, Marcus managed, then laughed. Absolutely yes. Thank you, Isabella. For this, for everything. That morning in the parking lot changed my life. It changed mine too, Isabella said quietly. You taught me to see people, really see them. I've been trying to carry that lesson forward. It's made me a better leader, maybe even a better person. She paused, her expression turning thoughtful. I've been meaning to ask, how's Sophie? Still planning to be an astronaut? Always. Though this week she's also considering being a paleontologist and a marine biologist. She has big dreams. Marcus smiled, thinking of his daughter's endless enthusiasms. She gets that from you, Isabella observed. The courage to dream, even when life tries to teach you otherwise. They talked for another hour about the new project, the team Marcus would lead, the challenges ahead. When Marcus finally left her office, he felt like he was floating. He called his mother immediately, and Carol cried happy tears. He picked Sophie up from school early as a surprise, taking her for ice cream to celebrate. "Daddy, I'm so proud of you," Sophie said seriously, chocolate ice cream on her nose. "Mommy would be proud too." "I know she would, sunshine. I feel her with us every day." That evening, Marcus stood in his backyard while Sophie chased fireflies in the gathering dusk. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from that parking lot humiliation to this moment of quiet triumph. He thought about Martha and Jonas from the story he'd never actually read but whose themes echoed through his own life. About being seen, being valued, finding courage when it mattered most. His phone buzzed with a text from Helena. "Heard about promotion. Come by cafe tomorrow. Special celebration breakfast on me." Another text, this one from Mr. Peterson. "Congratulations, Marcus. Always knew you were destined for great things. Hotel isn't the same without you, but we're cheering you on." Marcus looked up at the emerging stars, the same stars Emily had loved, the same ones Sophie dreamed of traveling to someday. He was a different man than he'd been 6 months ago. Not because his circumstances had changed, though they had dramatically, but because he'd found the courage to believe he deserved more than invisibility. "Daddy, look!" Sophie called, cupping a firefly gently in her hands. "I caught one. Make a wish." Marcus closed his eyes, but he didn't wish for anything. He had everything that mattered. His daughter's laughter, his mother's love, work that fulfilled him, and the knowledge that it was never too late to rewrite your story. He'd been dismissed, humiliated, underestimated. But he'd risen from those ashes stronger than before, proving that true worth had nothing to do with job titles or assumptions. He was Marcus Chen, engineer, father, survivor, and finally, completely himself. Sophie released the firefly, and they watched it spiral upward into the darkening sky, its light pulsing like a tiny beacon of hope. Together, they stood in the twilight, father and daughter, carrying forward the legacy of love that Emily had left them, ready for whatever dreams tomorrow would bring. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.